Well, welcome everyone. I was a bit concerned that no one was going to turn up to this panel, seeing as dreams is my favourite subject, and it was looking a little bit sketchy. But we've got some good. We've got Danny, we've got Stephen, we've got Dovile and Hannah, who have both attended my retreats, and so a few new faces. And I'm really interested to chat to you on the subject of dreams today. So I wanted to start off. Um, just because dreams is a subject I'm obviously incredibly enthusiastic about. Dreams have been the thing, the probably most influential factor in my life in terms of helping me form a philosophical view, my
Hmm.
worldview, my idea about reality. And I think that now is a really good time to talk about dreams with this kind of terrifying rise of AI and this
Hmm.
outsourcing of memory to the digital sphere. Dreams are a place where um, I would say we are threatened psychically, in terms of consciousness, in terms of humanity's well-being. It just feels like dreams are under attack, and I find it really interesting that alongside, what some people are calling the psychedelic renaissance, which other people might consider to be the sort of McDonaldization of the psychedelic sphere, that dreams don't really get brought up into the conversation. And yet I think they have a very, very similar mechanism and open up a very similar way of viewing reality. And I think dreams are a very kind of good, sober, foundational framework to approach the psychedelic sphere as well. And one thing I've found on my retreats, that a lot of psychedelic integration therapists come on my retreats and they're interested to learn how to navigate the dream realms a bit more uh, eloquently, coherently. So I find that very interesting. So for me, dreams hint at this oracular nature of viewing the cosmos and the world. They help us to make sense of the world, I think. They help us to make sense of our place in space and time. I have been dreaming, lucid dreaming, since I've been a little kid. So I've been very familiar with navigating dream space. And I think it's a really fantastic arena in which to get to understand yourself. And for me, the dream sphere is like a offers a kind of psychic map or architecture of your personality. And it also seems to me to be hinting at where we come from. What I'm kind of eventually leaning towards is that dreams are always trying to reveal to us that we come from a divine source, from the stars, from the heavens, if you like. And if you look at a lot of ancient culture, that most of the mythology essentially is based upon this returning to the stars. If you look at the Orphic mysteries, for example, it's about recognizing that you're a child of the earth and starry heavens and things like this. So I think dreams are vitally important. And I listened to Carl. Carl, I just saw that Carl's here. I listened to Carl's talk about DMT extended with Danny, can't remember what his surname is, one of the big podcasts. Carl, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was Danny Jones.
Danny Jones, that was it. So I listened to your talk about DMT extended, and you were talking about lucid dreaming as well, and about how obviously the mind of the person that is taking the psychedelics affects the visual phenomenon that you encounter in that space. And one thing I always wanted to bring up, and it's very current because the Odyssey is being released in the cinemas as well, is this ancient Greek perception of dreaming as something that needs to be checked. The veracity and discernment needs to be shown when you're looking at dreams. So Homer in the Odyssey talks about Penelope's dream, and she talks about how a dream may have come through the gates of ivory or the gates of horn. And if they come through the gates of ivory, it means they're false dreams. And it's all kind of to do with the word play, because the ancient Greek word for ivory, elephas, I think, it means deceit. And the Greek word for horn, keras, means fulfillment. So a dream that's seen to come through the gate of horn is a dream that's going to come true. And if you look at ancient dream interpretation across the board in any culture that I've ever looked at, their dream that dream culture, you see that people believe that dreams predict the future in this oracular way. And I think that there is a long tradition of scientists, musicians, inventors coming up with their best ideas in a dream or as they're waking up from a dream. So I really do think dreams are absolutely precious. And I think a civilization that loses contact with dreams is in peril. So I'll leave it at that for the time being and invite anyone who might like to talk about dreams to step in now. Stephen, I know that you are an avid dreamer and we've spoken about dreams on Bureau of Lost Culture, but what do you think about dreaming?
Thanks for the invite, first of all, Seri, and obviously I do bow to your amazing work in this area. I think that I've always been fascinated by dreams too. I don't think I've had many what we call precognitive or oracular dreams that I can remember, but I have got some ideas about them. Um, it seems to me that the dream time is outside time in a way that, consciousness is somewhat outside time. So it may be that our dreams are not responding just to things that are happening to our lives now, but obviously they respond to things that have happened in the past, and perhaps they are also responding to how we'll be in the future. So a particular dream might be in a reflection of something that is happening to us 10 years from now. Um, I think the other thing which really strikes me in terms of dreams and time, you and I had this conversation fairly recently, is that within the dream space, um, there's a separate memory going on sometimes. So I'll give you an example. Um, Say you had a dream that you had reunited with an ex-lover and you'd gone to live with them in some flat. This actually happened to me. That happened in a dream, and then in a subsequent dream, you believe that to have been your past. In other words, the dream being has its own memory, its own life, which you only access whilst dreaming. So there's a very odd thing, which is that we have a memory between dreams within the dream world itself. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience. Um, and I think the last thing I'll say for now, maybe come back later, is that some dreams seem so meaningful. I'm sure people here have had dreams that they can remember from childhood, dreams that they can remember from 10, 20 years ago. For some reason, you can feel them still in your gut, but you don't know why. We don't know why. So we know that it's meaningful and we can't explain specifically. We might be able to, it might be some reflection and we can see quite clearly what it's about. But other times, it's like we have an emotional life outside our conscious wavelengths. And there's all sorts of things going on there. And sometimes the dreams link to each other from dream to dream. Maybe you visit the same landscape in a dream that you've been to before, but only in dreams. Or you remember events that have happened only in dreams. And so I think that there is a sort of dream world which is outside our own time and outside our own wavelength. We can't hear you, Sarah. You're muted.
I muted myself. Thank you very much, Stephen. I love that. And there's a couple of points I wanted to mention before Carl comes on. So Gary Lackman was a guest on one of the Oracle Dream retreats that I run, which is this Oracle Dream sort of pilgrimage, if you like, that I lead every year. And we go to Delphi, we go to the Amphiarius of Oropos and or Amphiarian of Oropos and the Oracle of Trophonius and various sites that are associated with the oracular and healing tradition. And healing has a divinatory quality in Greece as well, because you had this class of therapist at the Asclepians called Iatromantis, who is a divine, is like a physician seer, like someone who can interpret dreams. And not only that, like intuit illness, like look at the signs in a person and work out what's wrong with them, because they've become very sensitive to the clues. And I wanted to mention that on the first Oracle Dream Retreat I did, Gary Lackman came, who I know you know Gary. And Gary Lackman was the bass player in Blondie, but pursued a career in esoteric occult writing. Danny was on that retreat as well. And he started doing dream experiments when he was in Blondie, and him and his girlfriend were having telepathic dreams while he was on tour with them. And his song, actually, I'm Always Touched by Your Presence, Dear, is about those dreams. So he's been keeping a dream diary since those days, and he has kind of logged and noted where dreams do come true. And like you say, they don't always necessarily come true the next day. They can sometimes be 10 years. And if you do keep dream diaries, and we're going to go to Carl next, who keep, I know, a very thorough and multi-dimensional journal, you do see actually that things are coming true all the time. So there's that. There's also like this idea about dream memory. I'm really glad you brought that up, because memory is probably the most fascinating part of this for me. And I think probably the trauma of birth does something to obliterate our memory of whatever it was that was before birth. And when I was a kid, I remember having these memories of where I was before I was born, and I was in the stars with my twin brothers before they were born. And I think dreaming is that process of remembering where we've come from. And when we die, we wake up to where we were before. And our whole life's journey of dreaming is to prepare ourselves for that moment. And often with dream memory, because memory is so intense in dreaming, like I've had dreams where you feel like you're remembering so much, you're like remembering the whole world, that it actually wakes you up. The level of memory is like an arousal to full alert consciousness. And a lot of people talk about this when they mention lucid dreaming. A lot of people say, oh, I've nearly got lucid, or I was lucid for 5 minutes, and they'll often be like, oh, too excited, and they'll wake up. And I think that too excited is too much remembering in a way that it wakes you up. It sort of ignites that memory faculty in your brain. One other thing I find really fascinating is how perspective shifts, and how you have this like non-local way of viewing things in dream space. So you see close up and far away simultaneously. Similar sorts of things that are reported in psychedelic trips. You can see inside microorganisms and from a distance, but simultaneously. So I always found those, I remember we talked about those Pablo Amaringo paintings actually last time we met up in the tape, but I think it's a very good depiction of dream space, of that kind of multi-layered tapestry of reality, like all events coinciding but kind of joined up with other phenomena. And the other thing is, when I was a kid, I went to the same place every time when I was dreaming, and I could draw a map of it. And sometimes drawing maps is a really fantastic way of remembering where you are in the dream and learning to navigate that space. So thank you, Stephen.
And just to say, you mentioned the Tate, the Richard Dadd exhibition is opening in London. The Royal Academy. Richard Dadd's paintings. I mean, he was regarded as being insane, and he did his paintings in an asylum, but they're a depiction of the dream world.
Great. I'll go and check that out. Maybe we can go and check that out together. Carl.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks again for another amazing topic. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of what you've just referenced with Danny Jones, what I was saying in there is that it looks like one of the main findings from the DMT trials at Imperial was that your brain goes into a dreamlike signature, like in terms of your brain activity. It looks like you're asleep. It looks like you're dreaming. Obviously, it's very different to dreaming, but yeah, I experienced some extraordinary precognitive effects from the DMT extended state experience specifically, because at one point I was experiencing my mental state 6 months into the future. So, I mean, I didn't understand it at the time because it was very jarring, but yeah, when I actually 6 months later realized, oh, this is what I was experiencing in my DMTX trip, that was kind of a major insight. But I've had quite a lot of precognitive dreams. I remember when I was a kid, I remember my dad dreaming about my dad giving me a watch, a very specific kind of old school watch. And the next day he gave it to me, and it was in complete detail to the dream. And, you know, I often have dreams warning me off specific opportunities or specific people, going, this isn't going to be a good use of your time. So I, you know, the more sort of clear-headed I get, the more I'm gifted with these dreams that are extremely beneficial to my kind of intuition. And I think that there are two types of dreams. I think there are or many types of dreams, but there's the processing your day dream, and then there's the transmission dream, which are signals, or they're coming from somewhere. They are to your benefit, whether it's your higher self or whatever. But I'm always fascinated by the hypnagogic and the hypnopompic states. And again, one of the first trials I did at Imperial was an LSD study. And during that study, they wanted us to take LSD at the Imperial Hospital and just work as normal, because it was when it was all the rage in Silicon Valley to basically be opening, to be microdosing, to basically be microdosing at work. And so I was just working as normal, and didn't really have a major impact from the LSD. But what was amazing was it radically increased my hypnopompic insights. So I woke up and I immediately wrote 40 pages, which was a huge download, obviously related to the ability of being in these lucid states. But I think the most powerful lucid dream I've ever had was extremely profound, because I got into a locked-in syndrome going into the dream. So I remember my arm kind of locking up, and I was like, oh, it's so tired. But I started my consciousness sort of tipping back into my head, and I just pushed it. So I pushed my consciousness back into my head, and I went into this fully awake lucid dream, which I can only describe as like being in Trump Tower, fully made of light. So it was very much like a DMT trip. But I was in this hotel, and what soon became apparent was that I was being it's kind of brutal, but I was being chopped up by gangs. So I was being chopped up into pieces. I could see all my body being dismantled, but I couldn't feel any pain, which is interesting, probably because I've not got that in my sort of lived experience. But I was being dismantled, dismembered over and over and over again. So I'd be chopped up into bits, and then I'd be fully formed again, and then I'd be chopped up into bits and fully formed again. And I was just terrified, exhausted, and thought, okay, I'm going to jump out of the window. So I jumped out of this window, and I remember falling to my death, feeling extremely happy and extremely relieved that I was going to exit this reality. And even though it was a lucid dream, I thought it was real. It was no kind of oh, this is a dream. And as I came to hit the ground, it was like something out of the Matrix, where it was slowed right down. So it was and then I stood up, not having died. And there was this figure in front of me, about a few feet in front of me, and she had long gray hair but a young face, and she was just wagging her finger at me, going, "There's no death here, son." And then I was like, shit. And then they started coming for me again, these gangs, and started chopping me up again. So fortunately, I woke up, because it had been an 8-hour experience, a whole night of not sleeping but being in this experience. And what was amazing about this was that I was immediately praying to Jesus, what the hell was going on? What was this? Extremely concerned that I had broken reality. And then basically I went to I had to go to a VR immersive experience during the day in the real world. And this experience was hosted by this woman. She opens the door, and it's the same woman that was in my dream. And I'm like, oh my God. And immediately I felt a relief, because I was completely cut off from thinking, what the hell was this? Immediately I'm saying to this woman, "You were in my dream last night." And of course, it's the corniest thing you can ever say to somebody. But I was so relieved to have some sort of something to grasp onto. And I saw it as a you must collaborate with this person, whatever. But then I started to think more deeply and started to talk to various people. And the first person I spoke to was David Luke, actually. And he said, "Carl, this is a typical shamanic initiation, being dismembered, being formed, remembered, typical shamanic initiation." That started to make me feel a little bit better about it. And then Chris Timmerman actually nailed it, I think. He said, Carl, don't you think this is about your journaling practice? That if you create, because obviously this was a bit before AI kicked in, but the idea that because I've now got the perfect data set to create an AI version of myself, because I've got this, as you mentioned, this journaling practice from three sort of semantic levels, which is content, what I've done, context, what I've felt, and concepts, what I've thought. And I've got that for 40 years. So I've kind of got the perfect thing to upload to an AI to create this. And of course, we all know the issues and the limitations, but there's not many people in the world with that kind of data set. And Chris made me realize this is exactly what I don't, or I shouldn't do, because what if I do end up creating a consciousness, however unlikely that is, that can't die, and the importance of death, and to respect it, and to honor it, and to not fuck around with it. So that was kind of my real insight from that experience, which was terrifying. And the last thing I would say is around this device, prophetic. So now there's a device that you can wear, and it's I think commercially available. I put it in the chat. And this again is a very transhuman approach to dreaming, because it will potentially enable lucid dreaming on demand. And of course,
is that one of those frontal cortex stimulating things? They've tried to
exactly.
do it before and it hasn't worked very well. The Aladdin
Right.
Dream or something it was called.
Yeah, so this is kind of the latest attempt. I've just put it in the chat. And the thing that has always been the blocker is that you need to apply transcranial stimulation whilst in REM. And a lot of these devices can't detect whether you're in REM. So it's hitting your left or right angular gyrus with a small amount of electricity, and that's meant to sort of kickstart your lucid dreaming. So, for me, this is a real issue, that if this stuff starts working, because obviously we know with lucid dreaming there are techniques. There's the hyperhuman version of doing lucid dreaming, which is to just learn the practice, right? Reality testing, like look at your hand. Am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? Multiple times a day. Eventually, you might start looking at your hand in a dream, and you may notice one finger's a bit longer than it should be, and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm dreaming." And then there's all sorts of techniques, as we know, for lucid dreaming, but this would circumvent all of that. And if it ends up working, of course, typical humans, we will take the shortcut option. And I'm just conscious that this creates a transhuman version of lucid dreaming, and it could lead to a whole different reality where, a bit like Strange Days, that film in the 90s, where people stop living because all they end up doing is dreaming, waking up, reviewing their dreams, going back to sleep, dreaming, and no longer being in the world. So it's like a hikikomori, another hikikomori exit of reality.
I think the dialogue and the feedback from dreams to waking life is the thing that makes them very rich. Thanks for that, Carl. One of the techniques I think works really well, I've found, for certainly trying to become more familiar with dreams predicting the future, or getting into that mindset of the dreams. I think, are we dreaming the future, or is the future dreaming through us? I actually think that we are generating the future in dream space. So before anything happens, we get the first inkling of it. And if you look at the ancient myths around where do we find out the future in all of the ancient myths, we usually find out from the underworld. We normally find out from the dead or from the chthonic underworld gods. And one thing I've been doing on the retreats is, because what often ends up happening is there's sort of collective dream themes develop, and people are sharing their dreams, that there'll be opportunities. I think I mentioned this in one of the other panels, for aspects of a person's dream to come true. On the last retreat, for example, someone dreamt that a woman was sprinkling a white shirt with holy water, and I was standing at a tap at a sacred spring at the sanctuary of Asclepius with this guy, and he happened to be wearing a white shirt, and I realized, I could make that bit of the dream come true by sprinkling with water. And then later on, someone had a dream that they had been given, or actually a kind of meditative vision, that they had been presented with a gold medallion. And it was weird, actually, because I got the person wrong, but I got the gold medallion right. And I realized when they were back at my bungalow that I had this gold coin that I'd got from this alchemist lab in Prague, and that I could give him this gold coin. It was the wrong person, but it was the same sort of token. So you can make these like little dream things come true all the time. And the more you do it, the more you're kind of weaving dream and waking together, and the weirder life seems and the more ordinary dreams seem. And I do think there's something incredibly useful about dreams. I really think they're trying to tell us something. And my intuition is that they're trying to prepare us for death, and they're trying to show us where we come from so that we aren't afraid of death. And I remember feeling that even when I was a little kid. Like, I thought if I could become really good at lucid dreaming, if I lucid dreamt all the time, that I would somehow keep my memories and go into that other space and be kind of conscious and aware. And also I did want to make a machine so I could record my dreams and play them as films for people, because they're really cool.
I mean,
now I'm here, actually.
If that ends up happening, and of course the Japanese are leading the way with dream recording, and I know lots of people say it's impossible because, you know, it's various parts of the brain that would be responsible for that, and capturing all those different parts would be difficult. But imagine a scene where there's no longer films being made, it's just who's having the wildest dreams wins. And that becomes kind of the new currency.
Yeah, I went off that idea as I got a bit older. I thought that was, you know, I'm like properly anti-tech now with regards to all
I know.
stuff.
I'm aware. But yeah, I love that idea that, you know, maybe the dreams are the reality, and life is actually the dream.
Yeah, I think it's a nice way of thinking about stuff. Actually, one of the other things I wanted to mention that I noticed in your Danny Jones talk that you spoke about, and I recalled the fact that we were the light experts at a culture conference a few years ago, is this idea of in the dream space, and you mentioned also in the DMT space, that you recognize that light is emitted from the things in the dream world rather than there being this outside solar source of light. But the same is true of the dream sphere. You see like this dark radiance of the living things of the dream sphere. And it sounds like that's very similar in DMT experiences as well.
100%. Yeah. I mean, just to explain that to others. So it seems like in this dimension, I hate the word, but, you know, we are living in this third dimension, and light is shining upon us from a light source, which is the sun. When you do DMT, Changa, ayahuasca, it seems like light is emitting from objects. And when you go further and you do 5-MeO DMT, you become light itself. So it seems like we're relating to light in these different dimensions, and we're probably all of these things all the time, but it's just, yeah, different states lead to different relations with light. And yeah, and then of course when we're dreaming, we talk about the light body, we talk about the astral. So I think that it's really fascinating, and, you know, what seems to be a golden thread through psychedelics, sacred sites. I love the photo we took together when we were doing the astral bathing, you know, watching you just dream and capturing that moment under the full moon. But sacred sites, psychedelics, and dreaming all seem to have this kind of thread where we're going into this trance-like state, and we've measured ourselves in the King's Chamber, our EEG in the King's Chamber, and we all looked like we were asleep, completely sober. So what is the pyramid doing that puts us into a similar state?
I was reading the article about Christopher Timmerman giving a Buddhist Lama a really high dose of 5-MeO, and he said that on smaller doses, it was just like he could feel a sort of drugged meditative state, which I thought was interesting, because I had a small amount of magic mushrooms the other day, and I had a sort of drugged feeling, like a slightly toxic feeling hypnagogic experience, but the toxicity of it was not as nice as normal hypnagogia. And when he had the very high dose, he basically was just light immediately. And so it goes to show that it has so much to do with the entrainment of the mind and the framework, the beliefs, and so much to do with that individual person. And I do think ultimately reality is infinitely malleable. So I think that it doesn't discount the encounters that you have or the meaningful interactions that you have in any way. But I think that it's really useful to learn how to navigate the imaginal sober, so that when you go in there under the influence of something, you can be a bit more aware of what's going on.
Yeah,
I wonder
exactly.
if I might interject just a brief comment. First, Carl Hayden Smith, were you on Danny Jones's show? I came a few minutes late.
Yes, just recently. Yeah.
Okay, I'll look that up. I remember, Sarah, I was in college, and in my dream, we took acid and LSD, and we started tripping. And I was like tripping my brains out in the dream, but I went to bed sober. And I remember how shocking it was to come out of the dream and suddenly realize, oh, I'm not tripping. But the punchline was in the room next door, my neighbor and his girlfriend had taken a lot of LSD and were tripping all night long. So I can't even claim that it was like my dream creation. It was some sort of osmosis through the wall. But
I've got two experiences that parallel that are quite silly. So I had one dream where I took a small amount of magic mushrooms the other day, and I've taken small amounts, but I've never had a profound psychedelic experience or taken enough to have a strong psychedelic experience. But one time I had a dream where a postman delivered me a brick of psychedelic meat, and I ate it, and I had like what was a sort of joke cartoon, what I imagine a trip was like for ages, and it was really weird. And I felt like I felt like I was really there. And then another time I had a dream about anal sex and Nazis. And I woke up in the morning and my friend had fallen asleep watching an Alan Turing documentary about the Enigma machine. And I think I'd picked that up by osmosis. Or perhaps in my dream, I was hearing sounds that I was kind of like working out in my dream space. I don't know what it was. But it was one of those things as well where it didn't really feel like my dream. It was a bit weird. I do think I was picking up on something. I guess like trance states, dream states, they are the places where we can pick up on this collective information field, I guess. I wanted to mention, because Erin mentioned, let me just get up Erin's message here. So Erin said that she loves to contemplate the link of dreams and memories. And I think that this is, I'll let you read the message yourself there, but it's a really good point that dreams mirror our emotions very strongly. And if we have a very powerful emotion, and Erin mentions like powerful emotions and how emotions are often processed in the dream space, like very powerful emotions. Many people will have like their most vivid dreams as teenagers or in those phases of life when they're going through a lot of issues, problems, struggles. And it's often about working stuff out. And I'm finding as I get older and I'm feeling more like I know myself a bit better, I trust myself a bit more, I have more kind of wholesome relationships, that my dreams are more sensible and wholesome and easy to understand. And very often, chiefly what I do in dream space is work stuff out. I'll go to sleep, like Stephen said, I'm thinking about a problem and the dream will offer me some solution to it, and it's very sensible. But when I was a kid, I think I used dreams a lot for escapism because I was bored living in Croydon, and I had fantasies about going to exotic, exciting places, and read loads and loads and loads of books. And I think novels are an amazing way of entering into the imaginal. And there's been scientific research done to show that when you read novels, you are actually forging new neural pathways, and in some senses you're imaginally living those stories, especially if you've got an active visual imagination. So I do think novels and writing stories, because I always also wanted to write, and I want to talk at some point as well about that relationship between writing and dreaming, and about sort of fine motor skills and the analog arts and that relationship with dreaming as well, because I think they play a very important role. And often artists, people that do a lot of drawing, painting, making things, do have very interesting dreams. And I was just talking today because my friend was telling me that she remembers her dreams more when she does knitting in the morning. And in ancient Mesopotamia, the dream interpreters were always the women, and when they talked about interpreting a dream, they said they untangled the knots. And I think this relationship between weaving and thinking about untangling knots is an interesting way of looking at dreams, because you do have to kind of take sometimes a jumbled mess of a dream and make it eloquent and understandable and sensible. Carl, did you want to finish off? Do you have any other nuggets?
Yeah, I was just going to talk about the Kogi tribe, because I don't know whether you know about this tribe in Colombia where the shaman are kind of chosen at birth, and they are then kept in the caves straight after birth for either 9 or 18 years. So it's an extraordinary process. And I just wonder what dreaming might be like, because it strikes me that we know from and I was on an Aubrey Marcus podcast as well, and he was saying that he did 7 or 8 days in total darkness in Germany. And he said it was the most psychedelic experience he's ever had, completely sober, much stronger than any DMT trip. So it seems like DMT is all about the light, but it's incubated in the dark. So I do wonder what these, I know I've got a friend with a Kogi right now, that, just what that would do to you to not have a contrast between light and dark, whether you would still dream if you've had no input. I remember basically being very young, not really watching TV, probably 3 or 4 years old. And I was having the same recurring dream every night of being in ruins, felt like Roman ruins, where I was walking around this village pretty much alone, walking into structures where the roofs had all caved in, and just wondering, like, is this a past life? Because it seems unlikely that I would be generating such vivid dreams every night for a year without any kind of input, no story related to that. So yeah, it was I mean, I'm always fascinated by continuous dreams, where you'll have a dream, it will stop at a certain point, but then you'll revisit it and you'll carry on directly from that dream. And it's interesting with people that do iboga or ibogaine, that they will have these life reviews, and they will start maybe pre-birth, and then they'll do like a week-long or a 5-day journey. It's extremely intense, but it's a life review which is showing you everything you've ever done wrong. So quite brutal, but showing you, these are the things that you need to kind of own or resolve. And just by revisiting it, you kind of processing it. And sometimes it gives you the opportunity to undo, or to go to the people that maybe you've harmed. But it's, again, this kind of like dream-like experience of, this life review. But then, you might end at age 6 in this iboga induced experience. But then when you do iboga again years later, it will start at year 6, as if to say there's an intelligence there that knows how much you've processed, and this is the next 10 years for you to go through. So yeah, there's so much there, and such a rich topic, and just grateful to be part of the conversation.
About the dream realm also helping you to make sense of yourself. Like, they know that babies sleep for an inordinate amount of time, and they spend most of that time in REM sleep. So it's like they're actually sleeping themselves into being, dreaming themselves into being. Is where we kind of crystallize our personality, if you like. And I do think, I think about the place I return to in dreams very often, that architecture is like psychic architecture. It encodes my memories, my thoughts, my feelings. And when I'm walking through it, I'm walking through a memory palace of my entire life's experience. So I suspect that the dream realm is that life review, but in a three-dimensional, multi-dimensional type of way. If we become knowledgeable about our signs and symbols, if it's like a kind of literacy with our own dream language, then we'll recognize and understand that. Stephen. Stephen, you're muted, sorry.
Sorry about that. Just to pick up on what Carl was saying, and to circle back to something we were talking about earlier in terms of, dream, which is more real, the dream or the waking life. So in Buddhism, they've got this thing called the Bardo state after death. This is Tibetan Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism. That there's a period after death before you take rebirth, and when the descriptions of it are very much like a dream, a little bit nightmarish in some ways, but there's lights and stuff. But they also see that in that form of Buddhism that we're always in a dream state. They're just different dream states. So the in-between state after death and in life is a dream state. The life is a dream state. Our dreams are dream states. So they sort of see them all as different aspects of our being. But I've got a question really as well for people, which is why do we think that it might be necessary that usually in dreams we don't remember being awake? So when we have a lucid dream, which is occasional for me, you have that moment of realizing that you're dreaming. So in the dream, there's an acknowledgement that there's another you, there's a waking you, and for a certain amount of time, they're actually able to operate together. The waking you is in the dream, right? But usually we don't recognize, we don't remember in dreams that we have a waking life. I'm walking down Fleet Street, there's an elephant on top of St. Paul's. Am I thinking to myself, that's weird? No, I mean quite often things happen in our dreams which will be totally weird in real life. We would be astonished by them, and yet in the dream we're not because we don't remember being awake. Now there must be a function in that, a reason for that our waking selves can often remember dreams, but our dreaming selves very rarely remember being awake. And I just wonder whether people have got any thoughts on what that might be and what it might mean.
I feel like I do remember often my waking life as a sort of parallel existence when I'm in a dream. And I wonder about that. You mentioned about how memories, like I believe that dream memory is some different parallel memory system to ordinary waking memory. And I wonder, I mean, there is the sort of evolutionary function of dreams, which is sort of self-preservation, basically, the ability to practice for future events. So we talk about dreams being prophetic, predicting the future, oracular. Most scientists would agree that dreams exist in order to help us prepare for future risks and threat, just on a very basic level. They help us practice life. And I think that maybe the memory function is different in dream space because we are supposed to be free of the memories of our past self. And it makes me think about the relationship. There's a lot of talk these days about the nature of consciousness, but I think consciousness is really awareness of memories, and memories creating this sense of self and this ability to make decisions. And the experience you have when you become lucid very often is this expanded consciousness of experiencing almost everything everywhere all at once, like this overwhelmingly massive amount of awareness where you aren't just you are every little thing in the dream. You are flying, but you're also the air that's lifting your body up. You can send your vision into any other person, and you don't necessarily see from like an avatar in a video game situation. It's like you are actually woven throughout the entire fabric of the dream. That's what makes it feel so exciting, actually, and what often wakes people up. But yeah, so I feel like there must be some protective function. And I think about like the ancient Greek idea of Lethe, the goddess of oblivion, and Mnemosyne, the goddess of remembrance, and that in order to become aware of the important information you're going to experience when you enter into the Oracle of Trophonius, for example, you drink first from the waters of Lethe to forget your past, and you then drink from the waters of Mnemosyne to remember everything you're about to experience. So I think there's some function in that oblivion where you can become untethered, if you like, from your ordinary waking memory.
Might it be also that when you talk about oracular dreams or precognitive dreams, that they may be recognizing something in our waking future, but they may be also recognizing something in our dreaming future?
Yes, totally.
So they're oracular with regard to future dreams, yeah.
Yeah, like it's a remembering of the future. Maybe dreaming is remembering the future, and memory is remembering the past. I had this experience recently. I was at the Globe, and you know, Shakespeare's sort of reconstructed Globe Theatre, amazing experience. If you haven't gone, I definitely recommend it. And I was watching Midsummer Night's Dream, and we were right in the pit, and we had our like arms resting on the stage. And one of the actors did this really hammy, over the top, like joke death scene. And I had the strongest, longest, most prolonged experience of deja vu I've ever had. And I think deja vu is often a dreamed it before rather than a lived seen it before. But I get this feeling that they actually come from dreams, these memories.
Yeah, I'm just want to finish off with one little thing, which is that, you know, Carl was talking about his dream journal. I know you keep a dream journal. The other thing I've found is that I periodically keep a detailed dream journal. I found that it actually, in a way, bathes you in imagination. So if you're involved in creative pursuits at all, it's like just keeping a dream journal, remembering your dreams. It just moistens your imagination. So just on that level of, you know, becoming a bit more sensitive to the imagination, it's really useful.
Yeah, I think also, especially when it comes to dreams. So one of the tips I'd give to people often about if they don't have very many lucid dreams or they want to dream more is just keep a journal full stop, like keep a diary. And then what you can do is you can start reviewing that diary as if it had happened in a dream. So you look through it and you're like, oh, this person could symbolize this in my life, or I can interpret this in these ways, looking at the sort of symbols, the mythological meaning, the archetypal meanings. With dreams, what I think can be really helpful is if you use your dreams in art, in a creative project. So you use a dream and you create a story out of it. I think there's something important about turning a dream experience into something kind of eloquent and complete and whole. And a bit like I was mentioning before, when you have these opportunities to act out dreams, to actually embody a dream and be the dream in your waking life. The same thing happens when you make a painting of a dream, for example. That's why I hate like AI dream imagery, because it's not using your imagination. It's outsourcing the imaginal ability to something that isn't you, that doesn't have your life, that isn't connected to the natural world in that way. And it's a different kind of manifestation through a screen, you know. So that's why I also always think it's really important to record your dreams using handwriting on paper, because it's a different process. And you do notice when you write down using pen to paper that there's something just about the tiny little fine motor skills that they unlock more memories, and you get more deeper, more detail, more interconnected parts coming up if you record your dreams in that way. Danny, I know you can wax lyrical about fine motor skills and dreaming and the hand. Is there anything you can tell us about dreaming and palmistry, I wonder? Is something like dreaming ability or dreams in general present in the hand, do you think?
Yeah, there is. You can tell from someone's hand, like, yeah, there's kind of diagnostic thing. Like as you go further down the hand from the top to the bottom, you're going from the conscious to the unconscious. And as you're going from the thumb side to this side, you're going from the sorry, I got that wrong. As you're going from the thumb side to that side, you're going from the conscious to the unconscious. As you're going down, you're going from the head down through into the body, right? So when people have got very large bumps here, it's called Pluto down here. And you get all kinds of stuff going on there, which is deep experience, trance experience, dream. Like if you've got lines coming over the side, those people will always have kind of deep and quite abrupt image, like warnings will jump into their heads sometimes in dreams. When you've got on the out, so this little finger is connected to the other, so the inside of the hand is connected to the self. And the more this way you go, the more this is the thumb that governs your will. As you go through the hand, you're going from the inside to the outside. So this is the personality, this is Saturn, it's the structures and stuff. This is Apollo, it's what we send out into the world. The little finger is Mercury. And Mercury is how we deal with the other, including other states, like other worlds, let's say. And about nearly everyone has a particular type of fingerprint on the little finger, which is a loop. But when you see anything which isn't a loop, those people always have weird dreams. They often have a kind of transactional relationship with the spirits as well, you know? So you can kind of find stuff. I'm thinking about like whether I've got any information about palmistry from my hand, like from my own dreams. I can't remember a time when I've had that. I have noticed kind of on another subject that there's, like you mentioned, kind of solving problems in your dreams. I find that waking up and then staying still and then like kind of formulating a question and then going back into that, what is it, hypnagogic state. I really like being on that edge because quite often something will come out of a dream. Like this happened the other day. I heard my name being shouted in a dream, and it was shouted so loud it woke me up. And it was actually the woman who runs a culture, Georgia. And I was having a dream about a culture. I was in a culture. I got woken up, and I immediately started writing down stuff about cryptochrome, which was what I'd been thinking about the night before. So there's this really wonderful interplay between
in the cryptochrome in the eyeballs to see magnetic fields.
Yeah, exactly. So it's in migratory birds have it in their eyes, and it links through kind of quantum entanglement with the magnetic fields of the Earth. But human beings have also got it in their eyes as well. And there's a kind of like scientists aren't prepared to speculate about what it does, but I know what it does. I'm pretty sure it's like it puts a filter on the stuff that we're entangled with. But anyway, that kind of like to move out of the dream state and then into a inquisitive state and back into the dream state and then out and start writing before you've done anything else. I find that particularly wonderful and particularly fruitful.
Yeah, I think it's a really rich time, and I think that's where devices are making a really big impact for a lot of people because they're sleeping with their device on their bedside table. I mean, I've even seen people sleeping with their phone on their bed, which I think is, pretty sad. But phone on their bed, not turned off, they can get disturbed by it throughout the night, and then they reach for it first thing in the morning. And that's why I think it's so good to have your phone out of your bedroom, to always have a pen and paper by bedside table, and to write down anything, even if you don't remember anything, to just write down that you don't remember anything and how you feel. And very often just in that act of like writing, something comes through. And I think the worlds of magic, dreaming, and scribing, the sort of scribal arts, have always been connected in ancient culture. And I think there is a very strong connection between writing, words, linguistics, and the dream space. And I think sometimes we don't give enough credit to the words that we encounter on a daily basis, which is billions. and especially now more so than ever, that those dreams become thought forms in our dream space, which you have to be very careful these days with what you engage with, because we're bombarded with so much information. You're not like picking up a book in a library anymore. You're literally being kind of spoon fed tons and tons of information without even in sidebars, absolutely everywhere, posters and advertisements, everything. It's just like constant saturation of information. And I think that dreams often use the words that we see and give them like real form. And one thing I've noticed in dreams, like I think Carl mentioned an experience of like going directly into a lucid dream, and that's always been my favorite way of lucid dreaming, is going from being awake, kind of holding on to that golden thread of consciousness, like Alice falling down the rabbit hole in Alice's Adventures of Wonderland, and noticing you passing through hypnagogia and entering into Wonderland itself. Like you find yourself at the bottom of the rabbit hole and you've gone through the hypnagogic rabbit tunnel and you're now in actual dream space. But one thing you notice when you're falling through the rabbit hole, and very often people do experience as a falling down through the body into some other space below them, that any thought that you think, like Alice, I think Lewis Carroll was an amazing lucid dreamer reading that book, because he describes a lucid dream so beautifully, is that any thought or idea that you have manifests as a physical object in that space. And in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, she's constantly reminding herself who she is, what her name is, the pets that she's got, the things that happen in her waking life. And that's very much like walking through a dream space, but being conscious in it.
You just made me think of, sorry, you just made me think of two other things as well. Were you finished? I just jumped in there.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the thing about calling a name is super interesting because like I don't hear voices very often. It's really, really rare. But the most common voice that people hear is their own name, especially the first time that it's said to you. And the first time you hear a voice. And the first time I heard a voice was when I was in my bed, and I'm pretty sure I was awake. I was sitting up and I was reading and the light was on. But I heard my voice, I heard my name being called really, really loud and clear. And if you look at Old Testament scripture, that's nearly always how either the angel of Yahweh or one of the gods approaches. He says like, Moses, Moses, or he says, Abraham, Abraham. And then what the prophet says is, in Hebrew, Hineni, which means, behold me, like look over here, right? And the next time I hear my name in a dream, I'm going to make sure I say that, probably in Hebrew, because that would be cool. But the other thing which comes to mind, because you mentioned the like writing, is that there's like Thoth in particular. There's a legend. It comes from Cairo. Who was a great palmist. I'm looking around because I've got his book somewhere here. Lost track of it. But he tells a story which is apocryphal, but it's of a priest finding a palmistry book on the Temple of Thoth or the Temple of Hermes in Egypt.
It was an altar of Hermes, wasn't it? He found a book of palmistry on an altar of Hermes. Yeah, I remember that.
That's right. And then he gives it to, it ends up in the hands of Aristotle, and Aristotle teaches it to Alexander. And Alexander then goes and conquers the entire world. And he also was said to have chosen his generals by the lines on their hand. But just the very kind of fact of interpreting marks on the surface of your hand or on the surface of your body or on the page of a book is something quite interesting. I find with dreams, I guess because I'm like just personally, I don't like these kind of post-structuralist. I like post-structuralists, but I can't do it myself. Like when I'm reading cards, when I'm reading tarot, when I'm teaching tarot, it's like, this is Golden Dawn system, and I'll read it like this, and this, this thing means that, and this card is this letter, and it connects this to this. Same with palmistry. If you've got a mark here, it means something different to a mark here, right? And it's super, super technical. I find with like dream interpretation of marks, maybe it's because I don't know the system, or maybe it's because the system is so fluid and so changeable anyway, or maybe it's so personal. I find it quite daunting in a way that the more structured hermetic systems are not.
Well, one thing I've been experimenting with in dream interpretation is using this like idea of language, and in particular the Egyptian hieroglyphs. So you mentioned the name, and in Egyptian hieroglyphs, name is Ren, which is uses the symbol of the open mouth, so it's speaking. And so there is something very important about your words and your voice being taken up to heaven, and your voice being used to communicate with the gods or the dead. And your name has to be preserved also when you die, and perhaps in dreams as well, so that you can have these meaningful dialogues. And your name helps you to not be forgotten once you've died. So I suspect that something similar transfers in dream space as well. Your name helps you to remember yourself in dreams. And so perhaps when your name is being called, it's a pointer towards remembering yourself somehow. But yeah, I have always viewed the dreams of any individual as being like an oeuvre, like a film director. It's your oeuvre, and I approach it in a similar way to that. But one method I've been using with the hieroglyphs is to look at a dream, get a person to record a dream in their own words, and then look at those words, pick out keywords, the ones that are the most emotionally resonant for the dreamer, and then look at what those words may translate to in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, because I do feel that hieroglyphs somehow preserve some deep essence of a word, like their deep meaning. And when you look at what the deep meaning of that particular word is, it may reveal some stuff about that aspect in the dream that the dreamer hasn't thought about. But I think you're right. I think dreams are inherently the most personal oracle that we have, but they're also the oldest oracle that we have. And if you think about our ancient ancestors who live in this world of mythos, like you mentioned mythos in the last one, this idea of this cultural technology that holds a view of reality together, which is fragmented by the scientific approach in many ways. Actually, mythos is much stronger for creating a cohesive, coherent worldview where we can all be working towards the same thing. So when you've got a people with a mythos, it's much easier for them to make sense of their dreams, because they can reference all the gods, all the plants, all of them have their kind of interrelationships and entanglements that they know because they're literate and eloquent with the world.
Sarah, can I ask a couple more questions?
Sure.
Just for, I mean, for you or for anybody really, actually, is that when we dream, do we dream that we are the age that we are? So I don't. Whenever I dream, I'm in my early 30s, I would say. Feels like, I don't know exactly, but it feels like that. The people around me are that age. And the second thing is that do you think it's going to be, I mean, maybe Carl's got some view on this, but that whether through technology, through DMTX or something, that we might move to a situation when we can dream together, you know, that we can actually share dreams, and you know that the consciousness between oneself and another becomes much more permeable in some way. That's two different, very different questions.
Say for the dreaming your age, I think that's a really good question. I think I dream that I'm the age I am now. But I know a lot of people I talk to dream that they're a teenager or
Yeah.
like much, much younger than they are.
Mhm.
Danny?
Yeah, I'd be really wary about plugging something into your brain that will help you dream together. I'm with Sarah on this kind of anti-tech perspective on the imagination. Like I think when you're in a house with someone, you dream together anyway. And I found that when I've shared my dreams in the morning, when people are going, "Hey, what did you all dream about last night?" Like I've had nights where we're all in and out of each other's dreams. It's super weird. And there's another thing which is quite interesting there, which is like when I dream on my own, my dreams often make sense. But sometimes there's something about the magic of being with with someone or with a bunch of people that the dreams only really make sense once you've done that kind of communication in the morning. And that's what happened on the retreat with Sarah as well. You know, like on the last night in particular, but we'd been drinking raki the night before. So I can't remember her name. But anyway, she said, I had this really weird dream. I think it was just a raki dream. And the dream that she'd had on the last night we were there was like the culmination of about a year's worth of weird mystical experiences involving like a feng shui master and um, like stones on my stairs and all of this kind of stuff. And like her dream was the key to all of this stuff, and also set off a whole load of um, continued investigation. We did end up with Cryptocone, as it happens. So yeah, I think we dream together anyway. Yeah, I'd be wary of the plugs.
I really agree that we dream together anyway, and I think perhaps, you know, one thing I'm interested in, I know a lot of people who work in psychedelic science and are doing a lot of research in psychedelics, but I am a bit surprised that psychedelic researchers don't seem to care much about dreaming, or don't seem to investigate it very much. And I think it's the most parallel, the safest, the most meaningful area of study they could do, but they don't tend to do it, and dreams do tend to get discounted. And I think how important dreams are depends very much on the person who has them. When I was a kid and I wanted to find out more about dreams, I remember going to my local library and thinking, well, there'll be bound to be loads of dream books by neuroscientists, because it's the most interesting thing the brain does. Nothing. So I came to the conclusion that neuroscientists don't generally have very good at dreams, and
it's
maybe
they,
you know, because they're more left-brained or something, you know. And I've always been I'm very left-handed, always did a lot of art, always into, not very good at maths, so I'm more of a dreamer. But I do think that there's a huge spectrum of visual imagination for starters, and a huge spectrum of dream experience. So you can get someone who has like a multi-dimensional, amazing, orgasmic, crazy, wild, full color dream life that they feel like they're really living, and waking life feels like nothing. And then people that don't ever remember a dream ever, or might have some wispy, vague, dull colored dreams. So, you know, I had a boyfriend once who was really into psychedelics, and I remember him going on and on and on about how brilliant psychedelics were, and they're nothing like dreams, they're so much better than dreams. And all I could assume was that he didn't have very good dreams, because you could never say that about dreams if you had really fantastic dreams.
do you reckon it's because they can't control it?
What do you mean?
The dream state.
So they don't want to have really good dreams, so they don't have them.
No, well, that as well, actually, yeah. But I was thinking, like, is the reason that psychedelic researchers seem to be so uninterested in that kind of thing because they can't go in and control it? The same way that, like, the the medical community was so, like, horribly opposed to hypnosis, and were delighted when anesthesia came along, because they could actually control pain in somebody else. And, like, I wonder if it's that kind of thing. It's like,
I suppose they can't monetize it as readily. I'm sure they could monetize it in some way, but they can't monetize it as readily as psychedelics. And it's not extractive. I suppose you could create a pharmaceutical, a neurogen of some sort, and sell that. But I mean, there are already actually loads of pharmaceutical products that give people weird dreams, but they're not necessarily good ones. So yeah, I don't know. I think it is a weird sort of snobbery, actually, because dreams are boring and, like, not for hedonists. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't have a very exciting dream life, so they don't get it. They don't get how good it can be. But yeah, I wanted to say as well about sharing dreams. Like, I think, like most people, if you're sharing a bed with someone, like, my dreams are always different if you share a bed with someone, or if you're, especially when you're in a couple, you're sleeping together all the time, you often are together in your dream, exploring a dream space, and you might not necessarily have stuff happen, but very often you're together. Because I think in a very sort of basic way as well, we are always picking up on sensory information in our environment when we're asleep. So we're hearing people breathing, we're feeling their body, and that is transferring into dream content of being with them as well. So I do think there's that. I do suspect, you know, I think that there have been loads of ancient practices that perhaps will come to light over the next few years, where we will become a bit like there has been a well-established continuity in something like Tibetan Buddhism and the dream practices there. I think people are waking up to more local traditions in the West, esoteric traditions in Greece and Egypt and Mesopotamia, and maybe more and more people will recognize. You look at something like traditional Chinese medicine, it's like a very different medical system, but it's actually very thorough and holistic in comparison with the medicine and the pharmaceutical industry that we have here. So I think people are trying to find something that's true, and that these things have been done forever. So I think that, you know, people always talk about humanity's going through this phase of amnesia. I don't know whether it's just an age thing. Maybe we just all go through amnesia and then we wake up to the reality of who we are as we get older.
Well, I think with neuroscientists as well, with a lot of neuroscientists, it does come down to the whether you see, you know, which came first, mind or matter. So, you know, the problem of consciousness. If you believe that consciousness is a product of chemical reactions, you know, okay, we don't understand it yet, but we will do one day. We'll work it all out, how all this complicated grey matter sort of interacts and produces consciousness. If you believe that, you're less likely to value dreams, because dreams will then just be like, you know, a puff of smoke, a bit of waste gas, you know, which is escaping from the chemical process. You know, if you're more likely to see that, you know, maybe that consciousness came first and consciousness is prior, I think you're probably more likely to take dreams, you know, or see that there's a value or a potential meaning in a dream, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do think as well, though, consciousness is a word. It's like an invention of, you know, what does it even mean? What does consciousness even mean? It's.
We haven't made much progress on that from a scientific point of view.
I don't think it's even clear, though, what it really means as a phenomenon, because some scientists will say it's like activity in the brain, but then that's just evidence of something happening in the brain. It's like we historically people have used different words to describe the same sort of phenomena, like in ancient history, for example, and in Sufi mysticism, for example, a lucid dream might be a true dream. Like you talk about these dreams where you feel like you're getting information that's true from something outside of yourself. They're true dreams. Lucid is a term coined by Frederick von Eden. There are different words that we use to explain the phenomena. Like I was talking about hieroglyphs. I think hieroglyphs are really good because they also use actual imagery as well. There's this extra layer of meaning that they transmit that is directly related to the real world. Like, for example, seeing in the distance, the word for seeing in the distance has a giraffe as a determinative at the end. So a giraffe actually can see in the distance because it's got a very tall neck and it's looking far away. So I think that hieroglyphs help you get to like the essence of a word. And I suppose beyond hieroglyphs, there's actually reading the world as a script, reading the cosmos as a script. And hieroglyphs are like an organized writing system based upon that principle. Oh, what do you think about the psychedelic industry ignoring dreams?
Can you elaborate?
Well, I just think like psychedelics are getting invested in massively. There's loads of talk about psychedelic research, and there's just a little bit of lip service really paid to this idea that they are similar to dreams, but there's not parallel studies to the same degree going on in dreams.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating topic, and you know, dreams are free, right? So it's that's the problem. It's
At the moment they are.
yeah, the moment they are. So I think it's really interesting. You know, like you're doing your dream retreats, and I think that's the hyperhuman approach. I think that this is for me the much more potent, going to just like what I'm doing with going to Egypt. You know, love to have a night in the pyramid rather than a couple of hours, which I know is possible, but yeah, just really sleep hygiene as well. I think that so few people have got proper sleep hygiene. Getting, you know, one of my friends, he's got this this policy of analog upstairs, digital downstairs. So as soon as you go upstairs that's it. No access to phones, no screens, no, like, you go into this old world, you go into this analog world. And I really think that that's what we need to do. We need to bring this kind of understanding of the sacredness of these powerful realms that we can enter for free. And it's much more of an altered trait, developing a dream practice, rather than a psychedelic, which is an altered state, which are two a penny. You know, altered states are cheap, altered traits are earned. So the more you dedicate and see it as a ritual and really create a relation with your dreaming, which hence the dream journaling. I just think, you know, our sleep hygiene's poor and people are not switching off. They're, you know, staring at screens until they go to sleep, and therefore they're, you know, I think that idea of pre-programming what you're going into, and also talking about what you want out of a dream. So, you know, this idea of saying, I'm exhausted right now, I've got an issue that I need to solve. Can I solve it in my dream? Or let's come up with the idea, or the you know, in that hypnagogic, hypnopompic. So yeah, I think that I fully hope and believe that we will, with the AI slop and the AI bubble bursting, we will value our human abilities way more, and give much more attention to them, because, you know, it's endo technology rather than exo, so internal technology rather than external.
Does seem to be like a rejection amongst young people of this, like, constantly online, constantly presenting. My daughter and my nephew were telling me that kids are buying like disposable normal phone or normal cameras now to take out on a night out with them, because I think they're too high definition with the new iPhone cameras and it doesn't look as good, and B, like, it's just annoying to be constantly online. And I think kids have kind of had enough of it. Like, this is a generation of people that have never not been online. Like, for me and a lot of you here, I'm sure, didn't have the internet growing up, and we're there, you know, when we didn't have the internet, we're inhabiting perhaps more of a dream space in a way, because we're not kind of we can enter into our imagination more readily now. Instead of entering into our imagination, it's very easy to enter into the internet, which is like a kind of collective imagination. But I think people have had enough of it. I think that for the younger generation who have grown up with the internet, dreams are a novelty. Psychedelics are obviously a novelty. So I can see why there's this kind of this desire to go back to an analog, old school, imaginal reality.
Yeah, and even seeing that map of time, like the 1,000-month calendar, because we only live for 1,000 months if we're lucky, 83 years. And if you look at the breakdown of that time, it's like the first 300 months are asleep. You know, you're sleeping for 300 months. Then you've got like 100 months like doing your ablutions and, you know, all the sort of like self-care and stuff. And then you've got 200 months working and schooling, and you've actually only got 300 months left after all of that. And of course that 300 months is on your screen. And
well, that's depressing, Carl.
Yeah, it's so depressing. But having that in every classroom, in every, you know, just to say, look, guys, you think you're immortal, but actually you have got zero time left. If you're on your phone for 8 hours a day, which is the average, 150 times a day checking your phone, your life's over.
Does anyone want to come back from? Well, the good thing about dreams, though, Carl, is you can experience multi-dimensional time. So you could sleep for half an hour, but it could feel like you've been asleep for 2 weeks. There's a really good story I heard about once on the radio about a guy who was in a coma, and he was in a really deep sleep. It wasn't a very nice dream, actually, but he was in a coma. And while he was in this coma, he dreamt that he was in a war in Australia for 2 years. And it turns out that the nurses that were assisting him all had Australian accents. And so he was like hearing these Australian accents, obviously in his coma state, and interpreting this, you know, pained body as being in a war for 2 years, and woke up and he'd only been in a coma for, I think, 14 days or something like that. So I had those experiences a lot more when I was younger, of falling asleep for, say, 2 minutes and it feeling like 2 hours had passed. So the dream does hint at this timelessness as well. And I think you experience something similar when you meditate as well, that you access this timeless realm. But dreaming is this very sort of fun and interesting way of accessing this timeless realm. And I guess it may also be the key to consciously and happily entering into the death realm as well. I mean, someone mentioned in the chat actually about Hypnos and Thanatos. So in Greek mythology, death and sleep are twins, and they both live in the underworld. And if you are touched by the hand of Thanatos, the god of death, the brother of Hypnos, the god of sleep, you fall asleep and you have a pleasant death, of which feels like just falling asleep gently. And you know, someone mentioned about, Stephen, I think you mentioned about like the sort of memory. Carl, you mentioned about the life review. And it seems like, you know, we don't really remember being little babies. We don't really remember so much of our lives. And so we are essentially dying a little bit all the time. But we're also, there's always new cells being born in us. And maybe this whole of our lives is the process of living and dying, living and dying. And what actually holds it all together is the dream, because we are eternal and ever present in the dream space. So I do think that dreams are revealing that our essential immortal nature to us all the time, and we're not waking up to it.
Sarah, thanks a lot. I've actually got to go. In fact, I've got to go to sleep quite soon, and hopefully I'll be dreaming. But thanks a lot for this, and to everybody else. Just wanted to say that I recently did an interview with this guy, Alan Pierce, who's written the book on coma and near-death experience. He's interviewed a lot of people who've been in comas for a long time, and or sometimes a short time, even a couple of weeks. And some of them have lived whole lives whilst they're in the coma.
Wow.
Like they've been in a world, and a whole life has gone on for sometimes for years, a bit like Narnia or something, and then they wake up and it's 3 weeks later.
I do suspect, I always loved those stories when I was a kid, and I do suspect that something like that happens when we die, that depending on, you know, I always want to die in a dream, in a good dream.
Yeah.
Die in a good dream, and then I feel like you'll be in that good dream forever.
Yeah. Well, Carl mentioned the life review on a burger. I've certainly had that, and that goes on for, it feels like it's going on forever, painfully so. You know, as your every kind of weakness and sin is replayed. You know, but it's probably only been a few minutes. But listen, thanks a lot for today. I really appreciate it as ever, and to everybody else. But I'm going to have to disappear right now.
Okay.
Great contributions. I would come back and say, yeah, there is this longevity cult, and I think that, yeah, like you know, induced comas, or you know, I love this phrase that I came up with, which is presence is longevity. The more we can be in that present state, which is, you know, it's like gold, isn't it? It's the rarest thing to overcome the distraction economy and all the rest of it. But I do wonder, like those people that do have like a 2-hour dream and they're actually in a 2-year experience, whether they are building neural networks as if it is 2 years. You know, because obviously we are building our own brains all the time. Would love to know the neuroscience of dream architecture and what that is. But yeah, in terms of, you know, again, technology is applied to this. One of my friends created a watch that you didn't look at, but you sensed, so it would vibrate every second, every minute, every hour, and basically burning time into your wrist. And the idea being that you would know time as a sense rather than an abstract concept. And I was like immediately very suspicious, because I was like, okay, well, what happens to flow state if you know time? And I said to him, what's the benefit of your watch? And he says, well, I don't burn pancakes anymore because I know time. So I know 2 minutes. I know 2 minutes really well. And but his argument was that he, much like when we do YouTube or WhatsApp voicemails where we speed them up to 1.5 or 2 speed, that idea that you can manipulate time, much like you're manipulating an audio book. So you could potentially, in an exam situation, have a 30% increase in time. You'd have a 30% extra time because you're manipulating your felt sense experience of time. But I think it's always a cost benefit analysis, and I think the cost of wearing such a device and maybe you burn time into your wrist and therefore there's no going back would be extremely dangerous for dreaming, for psychedelics, for flow states, for an endless realm. And it's another example of an extractive capitalist system where it's all about productivity. It's all about like getting the most out of your productivity.
It also sounds really horrible and uncomfortable. Like there's enough vibrating things in the world without having a little watch vibrating on your wrist as well. And I kind of think, this is the thing that I take umbrage with often with science, that a device like that vibrating on your wrist, no kind of thought really to the effect of a constant vibration on these sensitive pulse points, these veins, how a vibration is sort of unbalancing you because you're experiencing on one side. Like we live in this cacophonous, like horribly artificially vibrating noise pollution era. And so many people have accustomed themselves to it now, but it's not natural and it isn't conducive to restful sleep. So very often we're disturbed by vibrations, sounds. I mean, I had a friend who had constant migraines, couldn't sleep at night, and eventually he identified that it was a plug-in mosquito repellent. It emits this high-pitched frequency, and although he couldn't hear it, it was disturbing his sleep. As soon as he took it out, it was gone. And I've slept in environments where there's like an electricity feeling, and it'll be like plugged behind the headboard or something that affects my sleep. Or even I lived in a house once where the train went underneath the house and I could feel this like deep vibration underneath the house, and I wasn't sure what it was at first. But finding stillness and quiet is actually pretty hard these days. You've got to go a long way into the countryside, certainly in England, to get away from the sound of planes, trains and cars. It's difficult.
Yeah, and I think that looking at Faraday cages and sleeping in a Faraday cage where you've eliminated any EMF interference. I know that there's shungite paint. I'd love a cave of shungite, which a lot of people attach to the back of their phones to eliminate EMF. But now you can actually get paint, so you could paint your room with shungite, and that would create a Faraday cage. So I think it's absolutely about the contextual factors, not only for psychedelics but also for dreaming, to really amplify your benefits.
Yeah, I think it's always a good investment and always useful to dream. And I think that I do think more and more people are waking up. I mean, people miss their dreams, right? I'm sure people used to dream more in the past. And I do have a conspiracy theorist tinfoil hat suspicion that Wi-Fi and this kind of like cloud of frequencies that is fairly new to the world, like the unnatural proliferation of this stuff is negatively impacting our dreams, which are subtle life thought forms, and I think they are subject to these other subtle frequential frequencies.
Carl, have you tried the shungite paint? Have you slept in a room with it?
Not yet, but I can say that being in the Serapeum in Greece, where there's these 24 boxes, 100-ton boxes made of granite, extraordinarily, 100% 90-degree angles inside these boxes. You can get inside them if you're very lucky. And that's kind of a Faraday cage of itself.
$50 on you can get inside them.
What's that?
If you've got $50, you can get inside them.
Yeah, exactly.
The car Therapeum, and it is a very famous place for dream incubation. One of the most famous dream incubation centers in the ancient world.
Amazing.
It's where the priest of Thoth, Hor of Sebennytos, his archive was found, and he used to sleep in the ibis galleries in the north of Saqqara to have dreams with Jehuti Thoth, and Thoth used to regularly visit him here. And the reason why he would sleep in the ibis galleries is because the ibis bird is the living manifestation of the god Thoth on earth. And so when these ibis birds that were reared and they were bred by priests of Thoth, and they were looked after and fed and watered, when they died of natural causes, they'd be sold to members of the public, and then members of the public would get them mummified, prepared, make them a lovely coffin. Then they'd go and put them in a little niche in these underground catacombs, and then that was basically their shrine where the ibis bird's soul can travel up to heaven and become a companion of Thoth and give your messages to the god Thoth and receive messages from Thoth and relay them to people on earth. So the conception of the soul, one component of the conception of the soul in ancient Egypt is the bar, which is this human-headed bird. So the bar of the ibis can go up and be your messenger. So the priests of Thoth would often sleep in these ibis galleries so that they could get their messages from Thoth.
On that note, I mean, one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had in any context was being at the New Hermopolis with Mervat and going to the Temple of Thoth, but also going to the catacombs next door, where you go into the tunnels where there are these millions of ibis mummies, and also seeing the this baboon, this mummified baboon, which I sat in front of, and of course the baboon is also a Thoth replicate a representation of Thoth. And sitting in front of this mummified baboon was probably the most profound trance-like state I've ever been in, like completely sober. I'd love to revisit to see what it was, but just sitting there, in front of this, it was a true dream.
Yeah, the ibis and baboon galleries in Hermopolis are my favorite site in Egypt. And it's weird because I don't like being underground. You said you're not claustrophobic, but I actually am quite claustrophobic, and I don't like being trapped underground in small spaces. But the underground galleries of Thoth, they feel like they were visited regularly. You get this sense that there was a lot of traffic moving through these, leaving their offerings. And it has a nice feeling about it, I find. And they found, like you said, 8 million ibis mummies there. So it was used for an incredibly long period of time. And there were huge fields dedicated to the rearing of ibis and baboons. And then there are also rooms where the baboons and the ibis were mummified by the people working at the sanctuary. So yeah, it's an amazing place. And Mervat, our friend Mervat, has done an incredible job creating heaven on earth in New Hermopolis, where in one of the most impoverished regions of Egypt, although it's the most culturally, historically rich as well, because Hermopolis was the inspiration for Alexandria. Both Alexander and Cleopatra, who are very highly educated, visited the temple and the library of Thoth at Hermopolis. And it's also the city of the Ogdoad, the 8 primordial entities who create everything in the world. It's the birthplace of the word and the birthplace as well of Hermeticism. And the priests of Thoth at Hermopolis feed into later traditions of Hermeticism and alchemy and the magical tradition in Western esotericism as well. So it's an incredibly, incredibly important place. And Mervat has created this amazing sanctuary there on the side of the Nile, opposite Akhenaten's ancient city at Amarna. So yeah, it's an amazing place. A few of us on the call have visited Mervat now. Anyone out of the group want to say anything? I'd love to hear some of your recurring dream motifs or interesting dreams that you've had, or experiences of dreams revealing the future to you. I think often there are categories of initiatory type dreams as well. I think a lot of people have had these initiatory type dreams, a lot like people often report with psychedelics, that new information is revealed to them, they are dismembered, broken down, they die, and you're actually reborn in a dream space, or you're reborn in a psychedelic experience. So would anyone like to share anything of like that? So looking through that. Oh, I do want to mention, Scott mentioned Inception, and Stephen and I were talking about Inception before the call started. I can't stand Inception. Does everyone like Inception? Because it does seem to be a film that a lot of people like, but I thought it was rubbish. I especially didn't like when they were doing like little sketches outside the cafe. I found it very irritating. And it wasn't like, this is why I always wanted to be a film director, because I wanted to make films that feel like real dreams, or my real dreams. And the director that has come closest to that for me is Jodorowsky. I think Jodorowsky is really good at making dream-like films. And actually, it's a prescription that I give to people if they are having a dream drought, is to go and watch Holy Mountain and then dream on it, because it's this fool's journey through the major arcana, and it's so graphic and so colorful and so symbolic and archetypal. You just cannot help but dream it.
Yeah, I couldn't get beyond the exploding frogs.
Oh, really? Well,
I'm going to go back to it one day when I'm bigger and more grown up.
Yeah, I think it's amazing for dreams. I think that because also they have the fourth wall thing come down at the end as well. It's like it's so dreamlike, and I think that I quite like the science of sleep. I didn't like waking life, but yeah, I've been disappointed on the whole with films trying to depict dream experience. I'm trying to think what my other favorite. I really love Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Let's see what else. What's your favorite dream film? Quite like Federico Fellini. 8.5 is pretty dreamlike, but black and white, black and white's a bit disappointing. I mean, one thing I would say with I think a lot of dream experience does depend on the kind. I suppose I was always into any film or any book that related to dreams. So I really liked Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I really liked J.G. Ballard. I really like all magical realist kind of novels, really. Oh yeah, David Lynch is another good one, of course. And El Topo. And the one good thing about Avatar, the bioluminescent world, that was inspired by a lucid dream, but James Cameron had apparently as well. And it's interesting that it's bioluminescent, because I think that's a very regular feature in lucid dreaming often, is that light is emitted by the things in the world rather than it coming from the sun. Let's have a look. Yeah, there is something interesting about dream logic. Does anyone have a favorite technique for lucid dreaming? Like Inception, they have that little spinny thing, which I remember finding annoying as well. Like I suppose one of the practices I use often for becoming lucid in a dream is identifying what your personal dream motifs are. So Stanley Krippner and is it David Feinstein wrote the book Personal Mythology, and they talk about identifying your personal mythology, working out what your personal motifs and triggers are for lucidity. And it sounds very simple, but it's really effective. If you go over your biggest lucid dreams you've ever had, or your biggest dreams you've ever had, and you'll often find there's a recurring motif. So like I was mentioning, thinking about your your body of dreaming as like a body of work, an oeuvre, then you identify these motifs that keep popping up. And when you think about it and you go back over it, you start to see this thread running through all of your dreams. And then the next time you see that motif, you're more likely to become lucid. One of my lucid triggers is big cats, like tigers and lionesses, and they often help me to become lucid. And it's usually because they have this incredible power. I had a lot of dreams as a kid of being like next to or in a zoo that had very flimsy security and low fences. And I would have this fear of this like animal power overwhelming me. And I would become lucid. And then I would kind of consciously become not afraid of this animal and get really close to it and stroke it until it became gentle. And so that was something that I used to do quite a lot to become lucid. And Carl mentioned killing himself as a way to wake up out of a dream. And that's something that a lot of kids often learn, like jumping out of a window or killing themselves to wake up. Natalia, I like your technique, reciting the hymns to Hypnos and Oneros and tapping my forehead and temples, calling in dreams before falling to sleep. And I think that's a really powerful thing. Maybe it's getting quite late, so maybe we'll call it a day for now. But perhaps that's something you could do as a little added exercise attached to this Zoom is go away now and write down the dream that you would like to have this evening on a piece of paper, fold it up and place it underneath your pillow and see what dreams may come. And remember to not sleep with your devices in your room. Remember to have your notebook and pen by the side of your bed. And if you want to kind of get your memory kick-started, you could write down your day. You could write down your reflections of this Zoom, all the things that you've thought about, all the things that you want to explore in dream space, and see what dream comes to you. Before I close up for the evening, does anyone have any other comments? You can unmute yourself if you want to chip in at all.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Alexei.
Yeah, I loved Inception, Tenet. They are like my favorites, but they are not like lucid dreaming hardcore, like visuals, like mugwort capsules, everyday eating. But Affin Twix, a popular artist, really captured the feel of mugwort dreams that felt like Vince is it Van Gogh type of imagery. So yeah, that's my comment.
It's a very good time to collect mugwort at the moment, actually, because it's peak condition for collecting.
I'd
Hi,
say
Sarah.
also. Oh, go ahead, Isabel. Go.
Oh, I was just gonna say this is only my second time meeting with you guys. I don't know anything about dreams, but it's something I've been able to do since I was a child, and I had a friend really encourage me to look into it. And I don't know, I just dream all the time, and a lot of times what happens is that I can see what's gonna happen in my dreams, and I also vivid dream, and I have two friends that I dream, and then whatever they dream, like we dream together. So
Amazing.
dreaming has always been part of my life, but I never understood that there's a meanings and then I found you through Paul Check.
Oh, brilliant. I love Paul.
Yes. So thank you for letting me be here. I've been learning so much.
Oh, thanks so much for coming, Isabel. That's great. Maybe you could ask your dreams what they want to show you. I remember when I think I might have mentioned when I was chatting to Paul that I always had like super vivid lucid dreams all my life since childhood. And then when I had my daughter, who's 18 now, I had about 2 years of like just not having like my usual dream life, and I was depressed and didn't feel like me at all. I realized when I got my dreaming back that I had previously used it pretty much for just gratuitous wish fulfillment, doing what I wanted to do, going where I wanted to go, seeing who I wanted to see. And when I got it back, I was like so grateful. I would always say in the dream, like, what do you want to show me? And I would allow a dream to take me along rather than try to control it and direct it. And I think that that's a really great way of working with dreams, is just and also using it as a sort of detective, investigative space as well. If there's something you're wondering about, it's a really great. Do you try to find out specific things with your dreams?
I just started recently because I recently also started reading about Carl Jung, and I started asking and writing down questions before bed. And I mean, this has only been like 2 weeks maybe that I've been doing this. So this is very new for me.
Oh, great. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was just going to recommend cheese to people who want to get their dreams tweaked. That's really good.
Well, I mean, cheese gets a bad rap, doesn't it? Because it gives you nightmares often. And I do think there's something, I personally think it's good not to eat before bed, because often digestion issues can become like struggling dreams that aren't very nice. And they can be very sort of like visual and intense, but they can often be like a bit exhausting. Turkey also contains a lot of tryptophan, I think, which there's a Seinfeld episode where they drug one of Jerry's girlfriends with turkey and wine so that they can play with her toy collection while she's asleep. Couldn't get away with that these days. But yeah, so there are lots of foods that contain tryptophan. Also apples. I just did a couple of events in Glastonbury, and I think Glastonbury apple juice gives you lucid dreams, and anything that's really good for your memory is really good for dreams, generally speaking. And apples, I can't remember what the compound is now, but it contains a compound that's really good for your memory. So an apple before bed give you good dreams.
I agree. Yeah, because there have been times when I have eaten certain foods and it's given me like disturbing dreams, so that makes a lot of sense. And thank you so much, Sarah. I love your panels and your work, and so I just wanted to express that, and I enjoyed listening to everybody's contributions. And I wanted to share just like I had this dream when I became pregnant, and so literally before taking like a test or anything, I had this dream where I was like, it was nighttime, and I was next to the ocean, and there was a pool of water on the shore, and it was nighttime, but the pool was lit up with light. So I was swimming in this pool of light, and this baby was swimming to me. And that's how I knew I was pregnant, right? And then throughout my pregnancy, yeah. And then so like soon after that, confirmed the pregnancy. And it was just like, I knew that, it was really a, prophetic psychic experience with my child. And throughout the pregnancy, I would have these dreams with her, seeing her at different ages, and she is still very young, but I have seen a few of these dreams come to pass, right? And it's just it was really fascinating. But yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation, listening to you all talk about it, because there's like you, I've always had like a very active dream life, and so I'm really inspired by your work and your concentration on this. So yeah, I don't know. Thank you so much for putting this together. But I wanted to share that because those dreams really blew me away. So I don't know.
Oh, my pleasure. And that gave me goosebumps, because I had a dream like that before my daughter was born, and a lot of dreams about being in water and it being like bioluminescent.
Yeah.
What it really vividly reminded me of is one of the first lectures. So I used to run a little lecture club down here. And one of the first lecturers that we had was I want to say, he wasn't called Philip Glass, Malcolm Glass maybe. He was an anthropologist who specialized in the Trobriand Islands. And he and a few other anthropologists that were working in the area at the time, they I can't remember what the main anthropologist came up with this theory, but one of the main anthropologists came up with this theory that basically Trobriand Islanders had not associated the sexual act with becoming pregnant, and they had a a ritual of the women that wanted to have babies going into the sea and calling their baby to them, and the baby would come to them through the water and enter into their body that way. And one of the interesting cultural phenomenons about the Trobriand Islanders is that there was actually quite low levels of fertility, because when a couple got married, they would be built a house out of yams, and yams have a contraceptive function. So there was less perhaps likelihood of becoming pregnant. And so they weren't making the association. But it really reminded me of that, because I remember when he told me, I had this very sort of like visual image of this sort of spirit of a baby coming in through the water. And my recurring dream is the water of life. And just in the last week or so, I always have this dream, and it takes many different forms. And I've been in like Zoroastrian fire temples, sacred springs, pyramid hotels, spa complexes. But the dream is always about drinking the water of life. And we were talking about getting drunk in dreams or taking psychedelics in dreams. And I think sometimes agents like food or drink can act like agents of transformation in dream space, a bit like when Persephone eats the pomegranate seed in the myth of Demeter and Corey being abducted, that dream food changes us in some way, because our soul or our dream body anticipates some sort of metamorphosis. When we have this agent that we anticipate is going to change us, change does occur. So I'm also really interested in how it's well reported that spontaneous healing events happen in dreams in response to dream events. So for example, in the temples of Asclepius may perform an operation on you and you wake up cured. Or you may go and visit the Telesterion at the sanctuary of Elefsina, and Demeter and Corey reveal themselves to you and your blindness is healed, So there's some mechanism there that a dream event can have very real effects on the body and on reality. So any other Hannah says Glastonbury apple juice is the best ever. Glastonbury apple juice is so delicious. I thoroughly recommend. I could only find it. Chalice Hill apple juice is only for sale in Chalice Hill Gardens or Chalice Well Gardens. And it is really delicious and gives you good dreams. My mum told me that, actually. So I will let you all go off and have really good dreams. So please do write down on a piece of paper before you go to bed, and ask the dream gods to deliver a healing true dream to you this evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along. And I will put this up on YouTube as well when I've recorded it. Thank you, Danny.
Thanks, that was fun. Good dreams.
Good dreams.
Yeah, bye.